Welcome to the Slightly Scuffed Arena Decklist podcast. I'm Gerry Thompson, joined by Bryan Gottlieb, and we are on a time crunch. We have a lot of random stuff to talk about, stuff that I just thought of off the top of my head and decided to make that into a show. And I just rearranged my bedroom and my setup and everything, which of course means that my microphone just doesn't work anymore. So now I'm back on this old scuffy microphone.
I love the fact that you took the time to rearrange your setup and you are both uncomfortable and less functional than you were previously.
See, dude, that's the thing, is just if it's good enough, maybe it's best to just leave it, you know?
That's kind of how I've run my life for an extended period of time. So I understand where you're coming from. I think, though, you probably did the right thing. You should always try and move forward, get some, get some new ideas flowing. Maybe you were going to find a setup that was even more comfortable, and you didn't, but you wouldn't know unless you tried.
No, honestly, what happened is I created a lot more space in my bedroom.
Okay, well, that's good.
Which
so you have room for activities, which is important.
It absolutely rules. No, it's not even activities, dude. It is all about like the ADHD stuff.
Where
so like it is just
less clutter.
Yes, it is less moving stairs. Yeah. It's like easier to get to my closet. It is easier to get up from my desk. And so just
you're
like
more likely to both leave your desk and get dressed on a given day.
Well, it's more like put my laundry away or I don't know, be willing to sit down at my desk because I know that I can get up versus like, oh, if I sit down, I'm like kind of locked in. Like, do I have everything? Do I have like, drinks and nicotine, and have I peed in the last 2 hours or whatever, Right.
Big commitment.
So now I'm just like, oh, do I want to chill at my desk? If I wanted to for like 30 minutes, that's suddenly doable now. That's on the table, except for the fact that I don't have a working microphone. But in terms of removing stairs, I think I did a great job. And I don't know, just like it makes me happy that my room looks cleaner too.
Well, excellent anti-stairs work. I'm a big proponent of removing as many stairs as possible. So I support your efforts in this regard.
Big F stairs energy on the podcast.
Yes.
Anyway, the first two things are just silly. Like I don't even want to talk about them really.
Oh, my favorite kind of topics, the ones you don't want to talk about.
But here we go. So there is a big limited open tournament happening at is it just Magic Fest Las Vegas? Command Fest Las Vegas?
I think it is not a Command Fest, but you can't expect me to know this. I think it's like a Magic Fest and not a Command Fest. Are they separate things?
It's something. It's a big thing in Las Vegas that is
big
not
things going on, yeah.
Not tied to like a competitive tournament, as far as I know, or like an open competitive tournament. So then they announced an open tournament, and it was like, oh hey, like look at this cool thing. By the way, it's like $200. By the way, it's capped at 2,000 people. By the way, you have to pay to get in the event hall. And by the way, it's basically just a Grand Prix.
Well, that all sounds pretty accurate to me, but I think that you are being horribly unfair to the poor folks at Wizards and just being extremely anti-capitalist right now. Like what do you want them to do? Only make $500 million next year, not $1 billion? There's literally no other possible way you can run an event like this, Gerald. This is what it costs. This is what you have to do. There are no comparables you could look at, say like a 2,000 person Flesh and Blood event going on at about the same time, or a One Piece TCG event in Las Vegas that just happened a few months ago. There's no comparables.
That's the first appearance of One Piece on the podcast. I believe.
There are no comparables you could look at that offer a similar type experience at a lower price point. This is just what things have to cost, and you, sir, are an idiot and know nothing.
Listen, this is another instance of a thing that is a good change, but then the messaging is like, look at this awesome thing we did for you. You asked for this, and like, look at this beautiful thing we created. And it's just like, they go on to explain a bunch of stuff where at the end of it, I was like, this is just a GP.
Yeah.
Why didn't you just say like, we now have one GP a year or whatever? Like, because the messaging on that sounds bad, right?
Well, mm, to some people, I think it would sound better actually, but I I actually think like there's one huge problem in all of this, and it's pretty simple to solve. And this was to me the biggest misstep because like I am empathetic that these events probably have to be more expensive than they used to be.
Yeah,
I will
yeah,
say the
that's fine.
idea that they have to be particularly $225 is just demonstrably false. They don't have to be that. That is a choice.
Okay, here's the thing. Hold on. In relation to that, if we got sealed decks that were like pre-registered and everything,
Maybe you will.
Huh?
Maybe you will.
Dude, come on. I'm betting we don't.
Optimistic.
But I'm saying like there are quality of life changes that they could make where I would be fine paying like basically any amount.
Yeah.
And the problem is the price is going way up, and I think that the QOL stuff is going way down, unfortunately.
Yeah. Yeah. Also, there's just like obviously when you have these discussions on social media platforms that are designed to obliterate nuance, there is no nuance in the ongoing discussion. I think this is both the most exciting event that Wizards has offered from my perspective in a very long time. It is the thing that I am most likely to play and attend out of anything I've seen at the price that they are offering at. And it's overpriced. All those things can be true. Like they don't have to fight against each other.
Yes, absolutely.
And the idea that like this could not exist unless you priced it this way, it's not true. It's a decision. It's always a decision. Like there's just multiple other games out there running events of similar. Now I'll say similar, but like all this gets complicated because you're presenting this as a 15,000 person event, which it may be. Like that may be the size of this Magic Fest in Las Vegas. I don't give a shit about the other 13,000 people. Like that is not what I'm there for. I didn't ask for that. I don't want it. You can keep it and put it somewhere else. So when you tie the 2,000 person limited event that I am actually interested in to that, and then you say, oh, the economy of scale makes it such that now it has to cost this much. Well, you didn't have to tie it to that. You could do it separately. Again, as all these other TCGs are successfully doing at a much lower price point.
Right. So, and that's kind of my issue with them being like, oh, this is what you wanted, right? It's like, no, we actually just kind of wanted Grand Prix back, where it was like the GP was the main thing, and you go and you see your GP people, not you go in a room with 15,000 people and you try and find your GP people.
Correct. Those other 13,000 people are a detriment to me. I do not want them.
Yes.
They don't need to be part of this experience. And I understand this is my perspective. So like you can make all the arguments you want why this is a good thing for Magic and this is how Magic is going to be going forward. Sure. I don't dispute that. You make perfect sense. And this is how Magic is going to be going forward. I agree with you. I also think it sucks. I also think it's closer to something I want to participate in than anything else that has been offered, but there's still a lot of room for improvement. And the idea that criticizing the price point is just an act of ignorance where you truly do not understand what's going on. Like the degree of just vitriol towards people who might have an opinion that this is a little bit too expensive, and the idea that they just can't know anything about what's happening. It's like, I think I have a pretty good idea about like what it's going to cost to run the tournament in Las Vegas, how to get 2,000 people to attend your event. Like these are all exactly in the wheelhouse where I have a very good understanding of what's going on. And shit, you can narrow it down to a tournament happening almost at the exact same time. I have a very good idea of what is required to make that happen and where it can theoretically be priced. And, you know, we have our U.S. National Championship for Flesh and Blood in Las Vegas in August. It is a $50,000 U.S. National Championship. There's no entry fee for that. You have to qualify for it. So it's, you know, more akin to something like a small pro tour than this GP type thing, but it's also accompanied by a calling. And a calling is essentially a GP if you're using the old vernacular. It's capped at 916 people. I think there's probably a pretty good chance we hit that cap. And
that's a weird number.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know what that number's about, but there's a pretty good chance we hit that cap. It's a $70 entrance fee, $20,000 in prize support, and when you look at the rake for that, if like it sells out, the rate comes to something I think like $47,000. So less than what's being taken in the payout for the U.S. National Championships, which has no entry fee.
Right, but so to, I don't know, make comparisons, I guess, like this event being U.S. Nationals, this is under your marketing budget, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so
but Gerry, it all is, and again, that's a decision. That's a decision.
I agree, but I'm saying like it is primarily a event that caters to competitive players, which is mostly the type of player that y'all are focusing on now, correct?
Yep.
So it makes sense to then cater to those players as far as like the amount of rake that you take. Whereas Magic is now in an opposite sense where it is very much catering to the commander / casual / social crowd. And therefore it does make sense for them to take a higher rake from the competitive players.
But the rake on this tournament is $425,000.
Which can also be construed as 80%, right?
Yeah, sure. It can be.
Yeah. So that is high. even with what I'm saying, that is high. But I'm simply saying that like, you're like, oh, we're not taking like a big rake. And it's like, yeah, true. But, you know.
No, like, but that's like it's all beside the point. Like, I understand it's a little bit.
You're not trying to make money on the event. They are trying to make money on the event.
That is the point I'm getting to. Like, you don't have to make money on the event. And like, I don't know. Again, like the space for nuance is obliterated. The idea that like you would ever run an event and not make a ton of money on it is being presented as laughable. And from like a VC publicly traded corporation type mindset, yes, it is a laughable idea. And that's what Magic is. So,
but you get paid later, you know, it's like weird ass trickle down economics, but actually it kind of works in this sense where,
but they don't have to care about that. They don't care about that. And they act like they don't care about that. But to suggest that there is no other option, nothing else could happen. It's the cost of putting on an event in Vegas that dictates that it was always going to be a $225 entry fee. It's just demonstrably false, which is where I get frustrated with it.
Yeah.
And then there's also, I mean, there's just so many points of bad messaging. So it's $175 to enter this tournament, and then it requires a $50 badge purchase. If you just rolled in the $50 badge purchase and like said, there's two ways to do it. You make it $175 and say you get to enter because you're playing in the tournament and you pay this entry fee. Or you just make the entire package $225 and just be like, that's what the tournament costs to play, and ignore the badge thing. I actually think that helps your optics a bunch.
It does.
Because you don't feel like you're getting raked over the coals twice, even when you're paying the exact same thing. So that felt like a huge misstep to me.
Like when you fly Spirit Airlines or whatever, and it's like, oh yeah, my flight's only like $150, but then it's like, oh, you want to check a bag? Oh, you want leg room or whatever? That'll be another $50, you know?
Yeah.
Oh, you want like a beverage on your flight? You want a glass of water? That's another $10, you know? It's like all these add-ons don't feel good, right?
Yeah, but they don't care.
If you package it together, yeah, exactly. Because they know they get some people in the door with like the $150 price tag, right?
Mm-hmm. And that's where Wizards is now. They don't care. They don't care. You're going to pay anyway. I might pay anyway. Like I'm telling you, this is the closest I have been to wanting to play a tournament. So it just doesn't matter. People are going to pay, and this event's going to sell out. I would almost guarantee it sells out. And maybe instantly.
Do you want to talk about capping it? Because I mean, you're capping your calling, and you don't even know if it's going to sell out. Like I think the capping is good.
Yeah, I think it's important for planning. It's very hard to just have open entry and then, you know, all of a sudden 5,000 people show up and you don't have space for them. That's a disaster.
Yeah, especially when you're trying to juggle like 15,000 people, right?
Yeah.
If it is the main event, maybe you can do a little bit better planning for that. But like this is very much a side event. And also I think that, you know, the fact that it's in Vegas, like you have to make commitments to travel there. Like it's not
Hmm.
easy to just, road trip at the last second or whatever. It may make sense to like make people want to commit to it and actually sign up for it and say that they're going to go.
Yep. No, I agree. I don't know. It's all so arbitrary because then you ask me like, well, what do I think this event should have been priced at? I don't even know if they got it wrong. Like I said, it's going to sell out. It's just, I'm not saying they should have done something different. It's just annoying. And I hate it being held up as a, look how great Wizards is. They have given us back everything we wanted. They're trying so hard to put away this program or to bring back this program they took away from us previously.
Freudian.
And yeah, it is so laughable to present it that way. It's just like, they saw an opportunity for some more money. Shocking. They took it, and good for them.
Yeah,
right in line with what I expect.
I'm not even upset with the price point. I'm slightly upset at the messaging because realistically, the messaging is like, and this could have even been spun in a positive way. Like, look, we've been focusing on Commander in our Commander player base, and that has been awesome. But we also love our competitive community. We know that these are the types of events that you want, and
Yep.
we know that when there's like a big Magic event like a Command Fest happening, especially if it's like in your area, it may feel bad to not have a reason to show up or whatever. And we want to make it so that like the competitive players also can get involved in these events. So now we are like running this sort of event or whatever. I think that would be like good messaging.
Yeah, great messaging. And then at the same time, the type of messaging I would use if I was in charge of like Wizards OP, I would talk about the price point and be like, this is a pretty substantial increase from where we were previously. Here are the reasons why this price point looks different. Tell the lie about inflation that every other company is telling. Sure, that's fine if you want to go ahead and do that. But you kind of just lay it out, be honest about it, and then tell me like why it's okay. Tell me why I shouldn't feel bad that these things have tripled in price since the last distributed with them.
The problem with that is I don't think they have a reason for that. Like I said, I assume that the QOL stuff is going to go down, not up. But if they wanted to announce like, hey, you're going to get like this swag bag and, we're going to pre-register your sealed pools and like, pairings and all that stuff will be texted to you or whatever, like that would all be awesome. I'd be like, okay, I'll pay for that,
Yeah, I would love to hear a list of ways that my experience is going to be better. But like you said, I doubt that's going to be true. I kind of nervous what the experience will look like for this event. I think I just kind of want to sit this one out, let it happen, get some reports from the people who attend, because the complications of like the event being the size that I expect this event will be, if it is like 15,000 people walking through the door, that's not a positive. Like it makes things really hard. It makes finding your people really hard. It makes going to the restroom really hard. There's just like a billion different things that could not be all that great. And I don't know what like their tournament administration looks like right now. I don't know how good they are at running efficient, timely events that don't keep you, waiting around all day and not doing anything.
That's true. I hadn't even thought about that in so long.
Yeah.
It's been so long since I've had that experience, but I think the last few times I've had that experience were, oddly enough, in Las Vegas.
I believe that. And I also think like my own personal appetite for that type of thing is just gone. Like I'm just not waiting around to play this game. I'm too busy. Like keep it moving. And it's something that, again, from my own experience, like on the Flesh and Blood side, we've worked really hard to improve and to make snappy, and our round efficiency has gotten really, really good, and tournaments, close at a reasonable hour. And then I hear things like, stories from the RCs where you're playing till 10 o'clock at night. And I'm like, I don't want that shit. I'm too old for it. Like, that's not what I'm here for. So it's just a question of, it feels that things are simultaneously moving to a price point designed to target folks like me, and then an efficiency level designed to make sure folks like me never participate, which is a very weird combination. Like I will pay you any amount. I do not care. I really don't. Like if the experience is good enough and this tournament costs $500, I don't care. I will pay it. You can take an 80% rake. Do not care. But the experience also has to come alongside with it. And I don't think they were working to deliver on that whatsoever.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. Overall, I don't really care about what the price point is, but when the rake is 80%, that is really bad.
It is bad. Yeah. And like I said, I don't even know that I care about the rake, honestly. I just care about the idea that this is like a blessing from WotC, and we all need to kneel
that
down
messaging
at their feet and appreciate what they've given us, because it's so hard for them to run a tournament, and they found a way to do it despite all the hardship and uncertainty in their billion-dollar lives. They put it together for us, and just so thankful to have a company that is looking out for us the way they do.
Yeah, that messaging it's always going to bug the hell out of me.
Same.
But whatever. Okay, cool discourse. Let's get on to some other cool discourse. Did you see this stuff about this?
I did, and I actually am shocked you put this on here, because this is the type of bullshit that I wouldn't even touch. So please go ahead and give the background here.
Well, basically there's some stuff about Legacy is not going to be a PT qualifying format, and it's like, yeah, that's true, but that's also kind of been true. And I guess, some TOs, if they were just doing a team event, would just do it anyway.
There's also zero confirmation about this, though. Where is this information coming from?
There is a list of formats that you can use to qualify for the Pro Tour or something. Apparently that's a thing. But my only point on this, whether or not it existed, it's true, it's new, whatever, I don't care about any of that. The only point I wanted to make was that Magic became better when things that used to be novel, like qualifying for the Pro Tour via Legacy or Pauper or Cube or whatever, that just became kind of normal.
Mm-hmm.
Who cares? Let them do it.
Yeah, I don't care. I when it comes to Pro Tour qualification, I think it should be roughly 10 times easier than it currently is. Let fucking everyone play. Let them buy slots. I do not care. There is no purity. There is no competitive integrity behind the Pro Tour. I know people want to tell themselves there is, and it's this incredible level of achievement. And I get that you have to have something to strive for, but it's not real. It's not real. It just isn't. There never has been pure competitive integrity.
Can we do a podcast on meritocracy?
No, we can't.
Please?
No, I don't want to participate. I'm pretty sure people know my feelings on meritocracies, and yeah, no, I will not do that podcast.
Why?
It's just it's one of those things where I can't present it without being facetious, because it's so obvious to me. And the people who it's obvious, who are there with you, are just yeah, no shit. You don't have to talk. Actually, the people on your side don't even want to hear it because it's so fucking obvious. And then the people who are against you don't care. They're not listening to logic and facts. They just don't matter. And I feel I'd just be screaming into the void for an hour and a half. So, and I would scream. It's something I get very worked up about, but there's just no benefit to it.
That sounds cathartic to me, honestly. That's the exact type of podcast I need to do right now.
Yeah, we should just rename the podcast Screaming Into the Void. I think that's the right messaging.
It's probably already taken, but yes, I agree. That'd be good. Okay, off of that bullshit form of discourse, and we can talk about the big thing, I guess, which is there is a tournament in Baltimore this weekend that I'm going to be attending.
Yeah, and just as a threshold matter before we talk about this tournament, I just want to point out that I asked you to be my teammate for the tournament in Baltimore, and you turned me down. So that's I think a threshold matter before we get into any of this, and then we can continue with the discussion.
This was for Flesh and Blood.
Listen, let's not worry about the details. The important thing is,
this is for a game I literally don't know the rules to.
I asked you to be my teammate for the event in Baltimore, and you said no. So that's where we're at right now.
I feel like you're leaving out some key information here.
Whatever.
Man. Okay. Is that this weekend or something? Also?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's the same event.
Oh, okay. Cool. Yeah, I mean, I'll be there. You wanna go and team with someone who's not me, and we can hang
No,
out?
no, I don't. Thank you. No, I have to. I fly to Auckland next Saturday, and I find that as I get closer to that trip, my appetite for leaving my house gets less and less. So I'm going to skip this one.
Okay. Well, there is a legacy main event. There are a bunch of modern RCQs, and then I think we should talk about Pioneer a little bit too.
Okay, sure. So what is your main goal? What do you want to play while you're there?
I kind of want to play a nothing, but
Okay, that's what I would expect. That would have been very high on my list of choices.
So I am locked into a team event in Cincinnati.
Okay, that's
where,
exciting.
Where I am very likely going to be the legacy seat.
Ooh, okay.
So I was like, oh, I guess there's this thing in Baltimore. Maybe I should actually like try and play the main event and learn stuff. But like realistically, that doesn't it's not a good rationale because I could always just play Legacy on Magic Online whenever I wanted.
Right.
So it's not like I need to play in this event in order to practice for the other one or
Yeah,
whatever.
maybe I can make an argument that like the metagame information is pretty useful, but I also expect that you don't actually need to be there to get that information.
Could also just bird's eye view that shit pretty easily. Anyway, I was thinking about it and looking at Legacy, and it's just been so long since there have been any like massive Legacy events or like consistent amount of like SCG tour events to like shape the metagame and like solidify it, right?
Right.
So Legacy is still just in like this shit show era that I kind of hate because back in the early days of the SCG tour, it was like, well, I can build some blue mid-range deck to like prey on all of the 5% of the metagame share decks, right?
Yeah.
And now you just can't do that because the decks that exist are doing such wildly divergent things and there's no good catch-all or whatever. So like you really have to be basically just like proactive. It's not like, oh, I'll just, interact with you, like stop all of the important things that you're going to do. It's like, no, I just kind of have to like kill you or do something that invalidates all that stuff. And there are ways to go about doing that in a blue deck, certainly, but nothing that really strikes my fancy. So then I was thinking about whether or not there is a legacy deck that does that is tolerable, and I think I found one. And I think based on like kind of where the metagame is at, you know how like Modern and Pioneer are now doing this thing where it's, well, I guess Modern's been doing this for a while, but it's like, all right, this week we play Graveyard Hate, and next week we play Artifact Hate, and whatever. Legacy is currently in the cycle where my deck is very bad. So
okay.
I don't think I'm going to do well. I'm playing the blue 8-cast deck.
Okay. Interesting. I would have put you on a Neuro deck for sure.
Yeah, but like that's the problem, right? Is like you just like do Uro stuff and then you die.
Probably true a lot of the time, but also
like I like those decks. That's certainly what I would gravitate towards. It just does not seem feasible.
I guess I would ask what you are optimizing for with your deck choice. Like what are you trying? Where are you trying to get your edge? Because when I see the Euro deck, I'm like, well, you'll play probably about a 10-turn game. I expect you'll find ways to successfully draw things out. I think you'll make, on average, much better decisions than your opponents over the course of those 10 turns. And then you will win a higher percentage of games because you get a chance to leverage that decision making. Whereas when it comes to 8-cast, I don't necessarily feel that way.
So that sort of logic was true in, like 2010.
Yeah.
Where each decision that you make is like plus or minus 1 percentage point of equity or whatever, and eventually that
it was huge, and like that was Legacy to a T. Like,
no, it was absolutely, but
and that's one of the reasons I fell in love with the format for sure.
In this case, they're like, all right, I'm gonna blow it on turns 1 through 4, but then like top deck or reanimate on turn 5, and you just lose. You lose on the spot. So the amount of small equity gains that you get is true, but ultimately does not determine whether or not you win or lose the game.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's like kind of, it's applicable to a lot of forms of Magic, I believe. And I don't think Legacy is immune to that.
Yeah, a lot of them are getting there. I think probably why I like Modern the most right now is that, yes, the Modern decks are doing like kind of messed up stuff, but it's less messed up compared to what every other deck is capable of doing.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas in Pioneer, even like people can do some messed up stuff comparable to what your deck is doing. You know, it's like Rakdos versus Lotus Field or the Enigmatic Fires deck, or, you know, anything like that, where just like those decks have huge power spikes available to them, and you have none, right?
Yeah.
And so that is basically sort of what I'm optimizing for, where it's like I have Force of Will and Chalice. I'm playing multiple spells per turn. I think that it's pretty easy to just get out in front of anyone doing like mid-rangey stuff, and then leverage your minuscule bit of disruption to put away the other decks. So you're sort of like Delvering, or I guess Eldrazi is like a more apt comparison. And I don't know, you're like, oh, the small edges, like this doesn't give it to you, and I think that you're right about that. But I also liked playing Eldrazi, and the fact that it was a very much like, you know, you have ceiling on the amount of decisions you have per turn, and then you pass the turn and you just put your hand down because you're like not really interacting with anything that they
It's
do.
a level
right?
of freedom in it. I'll say that.
It's limit poker compared to no limit.
Mm-hmm.
And I enjoy that every once in a while. That's all.
I feel you. I mean, I've registered Eldrazi Tron in a tournament. I felt okay about it, and then take a couple years break.
Not Eldrazi Tron, man.
No, Eldrazi Tron counts. Eldrazi Tron counts.
It's the same play style, but it wasn't. You know, you didn't have like Ancient Tomb type of stuff, and this deck is actually good.
Ancient Tomb goes a long way. But it's just surprising to me that, like, I don't know, if I were to play a Legacy tournament, I think my default, in the absence of seeing something that I was just like, oh yeah, this is smart, this is lining up really well, this is what I'm excited about, my default is always going to be to pick up my Delvers, just because comfortable. There's some of that like win on turn one equity without actually winning on turn one, where you just, you know, daze wasteland your opponent and then the game's over, and that feels very good. It is surprising to me that you don't approach it the same way, because I know you are also a Delver fan, maybe not as much as I am, but lean that way. Were the current iterations of Delver decks just not appealing to you, or do you not think it checks that box anymore? Does it run into the same problem that you're kind of saying, where you play this small ball game and then you just get invalidated by a bunch of things?
I tried Delver a bunch of times and tried doing it the actual right way, which is to say, like, not doing dumb shit like siding out Delvers and siding in like draw twos or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And I found that in the absence of a lot of those games where you like mana screw someone, like just daze wasteland them out, that I just like lacked closing speed a lot of the time. Like, yes, I would be ahead for a while, but basically everyone over the course of like a 3-game match would be able to stabilize in 2 of those games. And I don't know, just something felt off to me about the card, like Delver of Secrets just in general in Legacy, where it's just like not fast enough really. And certainly it's, you know, been 10 plus years or whatever since that card has existed, and people know of its existence, and it's always very prevalent, right? Like, people are getting better at building their decks and mulliganing against it and making sure that like the Daze Wasteland, you know, shout out to Stifle, like all that kind of bullshit, like just doesn't get them. So it makes it way harder too. So I don't know. It's never really on my radar unless there's something really specifically good about the Delver deck. Like, oh, actually, you know, Lightning Bolt kills all of the threats that matter in the format, or Lightning Bolt is like also interaction against this combo deck or something. And right now it's just like all of the decks are like 0 mana spells, like fast mana. Lightning Bolt sucks. Delver kind of sucks. Like, they banned a bunch of your good cards, you know, like these sorts of things where I'm just like, like why would you even do this to yourself?
Yeah, so I'm not going to pretend like I have stayed entirely up to date on the legacy format. I'm just kind of bringing myself up to speed going through the last few challenges. And it seems like Delver's evolution is to add Tarmogoyf. And whenever I see that as the evolution, I get very concerned. Now, granted, the green is also for like Minsk and Boo in the sideboard, which I'm a fairly large fan of. Like the idea of the non-blue threat for the mirror matches that can't be Pyroblast. That's always been a real thing, right? And I've played all of them. I remember playing like a Johnny Vengeance and
Oh yeah,
whatever.
there are a lot of Hydroblasts now for that reason too.
Yes,
so.
Smart. Yeah, you have to diversify a little bit. So it's interesting, but Tarmogoyf definitely gives me pause. Not a card I want to see work its way into my deck list.
Yeah, it doesn't do anything except attack or block, and
yep.
I just don't like having that lack of versatility in a format that also just has a bunch of decks that have like pretty reasonably sized ground creatures, you know?
Yep, that makes sense to me. One of the things that is quite clear to me is how important artifacts have become in the format. There's just a lot of fast mana type stuff, weird combo-y things. Are you worried about Splash 8 at all? Trying to play something like 8-cast?
Yeah, no, that's basically what I preface this all with, where Legacy is currently in a state where basically everyone has like a bunch of meltdowns in their sideboard, and that sucks.
Oh, yeah, that seems like a bad place to be.
I got a bunch of Force of Wills and some Force of Negations, and I got some Hydroblasts of my own, and we'll see. But yeah,
there is something to be said that like a lot of the tools they are using are contemplating uninteractive artifact decks, right? Like you're not combo artifact. You are a different style, and you are able to leverage things like, say, Hydroblast, and Meltdown becomes a not very efficient card in those scenarios. It's not,
yeah, and it's possible that
Frozen Grip or whatever artifact removal you would use to sidestep any kind of interaction.
Yeah, and it's possible that I just end up with like a Kappa Cannoneer and Thought Monitor in play or whatever, and like maybe your Meltdown sucks too. Like that's also possible, and could have like Emery or Psy that lets you rebuild pretty easily, and a lot of, I think the post-board games are just going to be attempting to mitigate that card and that sort of effect as best as you possibly can. And I was doing my homework, basically going through deck lists this morning, and looked at a Legacy Showcase where it was won by this 5-color green deck that was, I don't know, basically Omnath, but make it Legacy, and had a very wide Green Sun Zenith package. So like they have access to main deck collector oof.
Okay.
And also like meltdowns in the sideboard and stuff. And it was like, oh, that's bad. Hope this isn't a real thing. Keep scrolling through the top 8, and there's just like 2 more copies of the same deck in top 8. It's just like,
excellent.
I'm probably just gonna get smashed in this tournament, or it's gonna be one of those things where it's like I beat the people who don't have the right sideboard cards, or the ones that I thought like, hey, this is a pretty good matchup to like queue into, and I expect some amount of this or whatever.
Yeah.
And then it's like I'm gonna lose to like all the meltdown and 5-color people and be like X6 out of cash or something. And that's like the most miserable experience.
It is. I will say I have no idea who will show up to this tournament. I have no idea about their level of Legacy knowledge, experience. I expect it'll be like some old Legacy heads who are excited for the opportunity to play Legacy again. I don't think this new expansion of Magic players has brought in many new Legacy players. I would be shocked if that was a real thing. I don't know who like owns a Legacy collection these days. It feels like a lot of people have checked out of that. So I have no idea what's going to happen with this tournament. I don't know who's attending. I don't know what the numbers are going to be like. That'll be very interesting to see how many people actually participate in it. Kind of a fascinating event, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, it is in the Northeast, and Northeast is traditionally pretty solid for
traditionally
Legacy community and whatnot. So if the tournament is relatively small, or honestly, even if it's pretty big, I would expect the average player to be quite good.
I think that's fair. I think you should be looking at a better player base than your typical SCG con event. I would even say much better than your typically SCG con event would be my range of expectation.
Yeah. So my hope is that people are just like do I need these meltdowns? Like, who the hell plays 8cast or whatever? It's just like they outsmart themselves. They're like, oh, I'd really like to have an additional sideboard card for the 5-color Yorian mirror you see.
Yeah. Yeah, man, what do you think the most played deck is?
Like, I'm pretty easy Delver if you like just group them all together, but I don't know. It's sort of
what's the percentage look like for the most played deck?
I will say 15% if you group all the Delvers.
Okay. I have no idea. I don't even want to make a prediction. I don't know what's going to show up.
And then maybe Reanimator's like 8% or something. I don't know.
Okay.
At least looking at Magic Online stuff, but
yeah, I don't know if that means anything. I hope we get a Karsten tweet breaking down this tournament. This is the one I really want. So if we get those boxes.
I don't think he cares about SCGs, which is completely fine and reasonable.
I understand. Yeah. Somebody else make that box tweet for me.
All right. If I don't play Legacy, I might play some Modern, I guess. Question mark.
What you got constructed, ready to shuffle up in that format?
Dude, nothing. I got nothing.
Sounds like you're not very well prepared.
Well, I mean, I'm prepared. It's just I haven't made a choice. You know what I mean? Like I know.
Do you have all the cards you need? Are you ready to go?
God, no. I mean, I have most cards for most things. And
is that a problem? Like I honestly don't know. Can you show up to this event and buy every card you need? Will that be...
I missed the pickup on site pre-order window.
Yeah.
Because obviously I'm short some stuff for stupid 8cast. And I was getting my list together and figuring out the stuff that I needed. And then, it was just like, oh, okay, this closes like way earlier than I thought it did.
Mm-hmm.
So Urza's Bauble is the card that I'm like, shit, I don't know if I'm going to be able to get that. And yeah, there's certainly a lot of stuff like that for Modern and, just any format, really.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of weird cards out there these days.
Yeah. And back in the day, it probably wouldn't have been a big issue because I could just like tweet it or whatever. And there's 1,000 people there that all have full collections or whatever. And now I just don't feel as confident or comfortable doing that. So it's like, I'll go to like 2 vendors and then give up.
Right. As is the way.
But yeah, obviously if I wanted to try hard enough and if I cared enough, like there is basically like nothing that would stop me from acquiring whatever cards I needed. Like, for example, if what I needed to do was like drive to an LGS and buy boosters to like crack some bullshit common or whatever, like I would do that. That's well within my range if I actually cared about being able to play in the event.
Yeah. Understood.
So do the like things exist for me to be able to find all the cards that I would need? Yeah, sure. Technically, yes. But am I going to do them? Hell no.
Yeah.
I'm not nearly as try hard as I was. So I would simply just not play instead. But yeah, Modern Creativity is the best deck in a vacuum. And we are in the weeks where people are packing like Orvars and just all kinds of hate, right? Like Hollow Moonlights, just mono nonsense.
Yeah, a lot of Hollow Moonlights.
Yeah. So just everything and anything you can to try and beat them. That said, deck is still pretty good, right? I like Is It Breach, again, in a vacuum. I think the more successful lists have been the ones that splash white, but I also saw some kind of interesting like blue-red lists. And then I also had a pretty good idea for shoring up some of the issues in blue-red. But the fact of the matter is that it has sort of the same problems as a lot of what's going on in Legacy, where basically every single deck that exists now is just, playing 0 mana spells and doing powerful stuff. And there are very few matchups where you're just like nickel and diming them with like DRCs and lightning bolts. So like, what are you doing?
Well, what are you doing, Gerald? That is the $1 million question.
And now we are caught up to the present day, Bryan.
Yeah.
That's where we are. That is an excellent question, one I'm still trying to answer myself. I looked at burn for a moment, if that tells you where my head is at.
Things are going south. That's where we're headed.
It's like, okay, it doesn't seem that bad against X, Y, and Z, right? And then, well, if that were true, it would be doing better than the occasional top 32 in a challenge.
Right.
You know?
And then it would be bad again. So
yeah, probably. But in theory, it plays out pretty well with a bunch of things like roiling vortex and uninteractive stuff. But yeah, it just kind of is slow compared to a lot of what the other stuff is doing. So I don't really like that. We're still in a place where there's like also a lot of hammer and cascade hate. So I think that Rhinos has done a good job adapting to that and being like a little bit more versatile. But if I were going to play a cascade deck, it would be Living End.
Yep.
I would not touch regular Murktide with a pole of any length. I'm just not about that. Rakdos Scam seems fine, and I think that there are some cool things that you can do with that archetype too. But
that was actually the thing I was going to highlight as a deck that I feel like both kind of suits you and that you could potentially make better than it presently is.
Yeah, so there is a list I sent you that you left on red that was the Goblin Bombardment, Bloodghast, Mayhem Devil version of the deck.
Yeah.
Which I thought I'd get some sort of like, oh, that's cool reaction or whatever. I thought
it is cool. Yeah, it is cool.
Yeah.
There you go. There's your reaction.
You just ignored me instead. But I don't necessarily like Mayhem Devil Bombardment because it's again a little too small ball for what everyone else is doing. But the idea of just like adding in some Bloodghast, because like you kill people with chip damage so often, it's just like, random 1/1 tokens left behind or whatever. And if at some point you filter away a Bloodghast to a Pyromancer or a Fable or something, and then you just have this recurring piece of like Bloodghast hitting them, like that actually doesn't sound that bad. It sounds better to me than playing like the random Croxa, even though there's upside to Croxa, like it being a gold card for your 8 pitch cards, like that's cute. But I don't know. I'm kind of interested in like trying a couple Bloodghast and an otherwise stock list. And then there are some Shadow lists. I saw one that was playing Shadow and Expressive Iteration, and Iteration in this deck that is just like pitching its hand away does sound really good.
It's interesting. It's an interesting adaptation.
Yeah.
I think Bloodghast is very cool. It does feel more like a sideboard card to me, or like where there's like one of in the main deck, you hope to spike it, and then you go up to like 3 in matchups where it's particularly good.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe or like a 2-1 or 1-2. I could see that.
Yeah.
So yeah, like Death Shadow stuff, and then I saw someone that were just like Rakdos, but with Death Shadow, and then also like a couple copies of Obnix List to wombo combo with that guy, and it's like, yeah, okay, like
that's cool.
I'm down with this because the deck really wants to fetch Blood Crypt because you have like Voidwalker, Season Pyro, and you want Thoughtseize as your discard spell because Inquisition is just not cutting it in a land of like Solitudes and Primeval Titans and Murktides and stuff. Like you just have to play Thoughtseize, so you're already like punching yourself in the face some. Why not just go all the way,
Yeah, half the way there, sure. That makes sense.
So I don't know. There's some interesting stuff there, but I wouldn't say that I don't have the bandwidth. I just spent it doing other stuff like rearranging my room.
Well, I think that was time well spent. Also, I'd be remiss to say if I didn't say the most recent Modern Challenge was in fact won by Blue-White Control. So I'm sure you're giving that a good hard look.
Dude, that's Waffo though. That doesn't count.
There is another copy, I believe, in the top 8. You're right.
Who was it?
Hold on. It's not in the top 8. It's in the top 12.
Yeah, it doesn't count.
Doesn't count. Very similar looking deck, but yes, top
Halsey.
12 doesn't count.
Yeah, not about it. Not about it.
There's nothing exciting about, like, if you were looking through the list to be like, oh yeah, here's the evolution of blue. No, it's still just blue-white cards.
Yeah, Waffo with a Hollowed Moonlight main deck.
Yep. Bunch more in the sideboard.
You have 3 more in the sideboard. Good God. Like, you kind of need to with decks like this because otherwise Veil of Summer just beats the crap out of you,
Yeah. That's, I mean, Hotland Moonlight's a fun card. It's very narrow, but if that's what the format's about, seems fine to me.
Yeah, I don't really like narrow in modern. Like ideally, if it's a card like that where it's like, oh, I just want to stop this, 4 mana spell or whatever, I would hope that you could do better, but you can't really because they have the best counterplay imaginable.
Yeah, I also am more accepting of narrow, where like you are not very polarized and like you don't need your sideboard to fix matchups. You're just already playing a bunch of 50-50s anyway, and then like you just get spikes for
Yeah,
certain prevalent matchups. I think that's a fine way to go about things.
and that's more or less what Wafo's sideboard is doing. He has like Crumble to Dust, Rest in Peace, Stony Silence,
Yeah,
Flame Blitz, Blossoming
yeah.
Calm, just all hammers.
I think that's the way to do it when you're building a deck like this.
Yeah, I do too. I don't I don't think that Amulet is that bad. It does have like slight force of vigor problems or whatever, and like it being kind of slow compared to other stuff is kind of a problem. Like it does have some issues, right? But like as far as I can tell, that's the thing where I'm just like, maybe this is like the most generically good right now.
Mm, it's interesting. It does feel to me as a former Amulet truther, it feels to me like the format has changed, unfortunately, and there's just like there's no edge there anymore. You're neither the strongest deck in the like turns 4 through 5 region. You have still those explosive starts, but now a bunch of other decks do as well. It used to be we were the only deck in Modern where you're
Yeah,
able to do this stuff. That is not the case anymore. Things have dramatically changed, and I still like Amulet. I think it's about a 49% deck. Like there's just not a ton of great matchups, and you can play it. And if you're really good with it, you'll probably be okay. But for a long time, the deck was able to carry me, and I think the opposite has to be true now.
yeah. It's no longer about the deck having raw power. Like I think you still have a little bit more raw power than most people, and you do it a little bit
Little
better on
bit,
average. But
little bit.
the fact that things are much closer to even now is certainly concerning. And yeah, like Primeval Titan is just not a very impressive end game. Like I kind of want them to get something like newer and better. Like I want the Lotus versions of the deck to be like a good version of the thing. I want them to get some improvement because like the deck deserves a little bit of an upgrade at this point.
I could use it. Yeah, there was a period where it felt like every single set was just like amulet card, amulet card, amulet card.
Yeah,
And
which is weird because the deck
it
is like
is
so
weird.
narrow and goofy.
It is weird, but you just kept getting these like really small, but because you were a tutory type deck, like you just need one copy, and then the way you're able to play changes pretty dramatically.
Yeah.
And they got a lot of that. To say nothing of things like Saga, where you just had like a hard tutor built in for your best card that also was just like your primary card type. Like that was about as good as it could get.
Yeah. Yeah. So I don't know. I'm up in the air. Saw some stuff about like Bring to Light Scape Shift being good, and it's like I kind of buy that because I think that the Omnath stuff, like what it's trying to do, just like good cards and pitch cards, is good. But you look at a lot of like Wafo's success, where it's like, well, a lot of that is just on the back of like Solitude Leyline Binding, which is like a lot of the stuff that I like about Omnath, and then Creativity has a lot of the same stuff going for it, where you have Ren and Teferi and Leyline Binding, and so
Yeah,
a lot of these just
that package goes to a lot of places.
Yeah, exactly. It used to be like, oh, Omnath was like the only deck capable of doing stuff like that, but now it's just like anyone can kind of like splash this where they want it. So then, is the card Omnath actually good? And I think the answer to that is a pretty resounding no.
Yeah, medium.
Yeah,
Medium
so
card.
I think Bring to Light Scape Shift is doing that same sort of stuff where you have Leyline Binding and a bunch of the good cards, right? But you actually have like this finish at the top end instead of just dirtily nonsense. So I think that that's okay too, but definitely has a lot of problems.
For someone else to solve.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. Basically, everything stinks. The end.
Well, that's that seems correct, just broadly speaking. Also true about most Magic formats. Everything stinks a little bit. Speaking of a format where everything stinks, Pioneer check-in?
Yeah, let's do that. The end of this podcast is brought to you again by a Frank Carson tweet. So Frank tweeted out the Pioneer metagame and win rates from last weekend's regional championships in Athens and Taipei, which is just absolutely wonderful. And the top two decks for win percentage were Azorius Lotus Field and Azorius Control.
Yeah, Azorius Control is odd. Not exactly what I was expecting to see dominate. I will point out sample sizes here are smaller. Like, this is not the huge trove of data we had previously.
The Control one is pretty big, though.
It is, let's see, 280 matches with a 56% win rate. So really dominant performance by Azorius Control, I would say. Favorable Rakdos Sacrifice matchup, which, as we predicted, did pick up a bit. It's there. It's not anywhere near eclipsing Rakdos midrange. It's looking at like about 600 matches of Rakdos midrange versus about 250 of Rakdos Sacrifice. However, Rakdos Sacrifice with a 54% win rate, Rakdos midrange 47% win rate. So these things are not built the same. But the point is, Azorius Control did well against all versions of Rakdos. Really, it's beating up on it whether you're playing the Lotus Field version or the traditional version. And so,
well, Azorius Control went 45% against Sac.
Oh, okay, yeah,
like
yeah, softer matchup against Sac. Yeah, okay. Beating up on the OG Rakdos midrange at 61%.
Yeah. So that's cool, I guess. I didn't really look at the lists, so I don't know if the Azorius Control decks were like any different or if it's more of just the same, and maybe the format got a little bit better for it or whatever. But the Lotus Field, Azorius Lotus Field win percentage is about where I expected it, but yeah, like 22-17 is like such a small sample size that it's just like nothing to me.
Yeah, I think that this is just too small to really take any conclusion from. I still think we're headed towards an Azorius Lotus Field downturn sometime in the next collection of results. But
okay,
yeah, just too small here to really take away any conclusion.
Third place, Boros Convoke. I know that it won the RC in Athens.
Yeah.
Overall, 55.6% win rate.
Caught him slipping, Gerald. I think they caught him slipping. Like, all the focus was on this deck for that first round. It's a very medium.
Cut all the cards.
I think so. Yeah, I think it became like it was the focal point of the format, and it very much became not that. And you see what happens if you don't pay attention to a deck like this.
So Convoke went 3-8 against Mono Green, 5-6 against Fires, 6-7 against Azorius Control, 4-8 against Rakdos Sac, but otherwise had positive matchups.
Yeah, beating up on Mono White Humans, which, man, there's some real polarized matchups for Mono White Humans. You need to make a really confident metagame call before you're bringing that deck to any tournament. I would stay away from that deck. Wouldn't touch it with a 10-foot pole.
I was looking at Humans for Modern and kind of for Pioneer too, but ultimately decided that it was kind of similar to Burn, where it's like, oh yeah, this does like, 5-0 quite a bit or whatever, but then just gets obliterated in the challenges and stuff.
Yep.
So I'm gonna pick up the cards to have them, like, just in case. I just want to like splash around at some point, but I would never, I don't think, register that deck in Pioneer if my ultimate goal was to win the tournament. Yeah.
Good thinking. I support that.
Rakdos Sac 54%, not bad. 131 and 111. Bad against Fires, 32%, 43% against Creativity. Positive matchups everywhere else. That looks pretty good.
Yeah, that's kind of to be expected, and yeah, that does look quite good. A really kind of surprising result. Lotus Field went 2-9 against Rakdos Sac. So if that is actually representative of a swing in Rakdos's favor for that match, like, that was kind of like against the regular Rakdos list, Lotus Field went 54%, and these are pretty small sample sizes. So
yeah, if that's real, then like slam dunk, Rakdos is where you want to be.
I agree. Especially in fields against better players where I expect some more Lotus Field to show up. Things like, Pro Tours, I think Rakdos Sack gets a lot of points in those scenarios.
Yeah, you're kind of bad against like 4 mana sorcery mid range, combo mid range,
Sure.
like fires and
Yeah,
creativity or
makes
whatever,
sense.
but like you're good against everything else. And if that's what it takes, like, utilizing your sideboard cards to beat up on Lotus Field and control and making sure that you solidify your matchups against like creature decks. And again, I count Mono Green Devotion as a creature deck, like 2 to 3 Furnace Rains in the sideboard or whatever.
Yep.
Then I think it's completely fine to just kind of like eat it to the sorcery decks, because creativity did real bad. 48%. I guess that's not real bad, but it's pretty bad.
Yeah, for like a deck that's supposed to, I mean, it's kind of in the same boat as Rakdos Midrange, where it's supposed to be very much headlining the format, and it's just not getting the job done right now.
Yeah, and then Enigmatic Fires, 49%. That one is a little bit weirder to me because I don't know what the lists look like, and it's like there are lists from a month ago, and then there are the updated lists with like a Coma, and I think the Coma is really very good. It looks certainly very good against like Mono Green Devotion and whatnot, just being able to like slow them down, because I don't know, we were talking about like their power spike turn and it ultimately having no impactful thing to get against Devotion or whatever, and it's like, no, actually like Coma's quite good.
That's a big difference maker. I mean, in a deck where you're tutoring, finding the pieces you need, it really does make a big deal if you have that one piece. So
yeah, so I think the upgrades for that deck are significant, and I also think the metagaming aspect of it is pretty important too, where Elliot Raff had like main deck temporary lockdowns in the Boros Convoke format, and like I don't know if people were still caring about Convoke in this event or not. So yeah, I think that there's a lot of stuff you could do to make those numbers go up and have that deck perform a little bit better. But
sure, makes sense.
Creativity, I think, is just kind of stuck. And we sort of talked about that last week, where it's just like, I don't know, is World Spine Worm good? Is Atraxa good? Like, kind of no in a lot of instances. So
yeah, middle of the road these days, which is odd. I don't want to go like deck by deck, but I do think it's worth checking in on Mono Green Devotion after a pretty strong performance last week. Things trending down here, 48.2% win rate. Looks like the second most played deck after Rakdos Midrange, I believe. Anything to make of a bit of a downturn here. Looking like tough Azorius control matchup in this bracket, 35%, 12 and 22 in that matchup.
Yeah, and just like losing a little bit against Rakdos Sacrifice too, when I think before against mid-range, like you're eating pretty good, like you got it in good in that matchup for sure.
Yeah, it's 56% here against Rakdos Midrange and 43% against Rakdos Sacrifice. So that's a big difference.
Yeah, so losing a little bit to humans, beating fires in creativity, losing to Azorius Control, losing a little bit to Rakdos Sacrifice. Like, I mean, these numbers aren't bad, but like, it's just another case of Mono Green Devotion is just the deck that it is. Like, there's not a whole lot of room to maneuver, like there's maybe 10 cards you can play with in the entire 75.
Yep, for sure.
What else strikes you as interesting?
I think that's about it. The main thing is my takeaway is just like if I was playing a Pioneer tournament, I would be playing Rakdos Sacrifice, and I don't even think it's all that close. I think so many things about the numbers here are very, very appealing to me.
Yeah, I agree with that. Cool, we're on the same page. So when I was putting together my list of like cards to pick up in Baltimore, I had the Feign Death nonsense on there. And in regards to like the Death Shadow versions, I was also going to get Malakir Rebirths.
Okay.
And
just stocking up on these anti-death effects.
When certainly I've written on the back of many of these cards, right?
Yes, but for sure.
Malakir Rebirth is $6, in case you were wondering.
Wow.
So, fuck me, I guess. But other things.
Is that a Zendikar card?
Yeah, it's an uncommon DFC. That's why. It's just like good, right? If you're playing Commander and have some creatures or whatever, it's probably just good.
Yeah.
I don't know what Balaged Rebirth is, for example. I don't imagine it's $6, but if it's like $3, I won't be shocked.
just priced out of the Malakir Rebirth game. That's tough.
But yeah, also among that list of cards was stuff that I was missing for Sacrifice, like some Furnace Veins or
Good
Furnace
thinking.
Rains.
Balagad Recovery, $2.20.
Yeah.
So still like pretty good for an uncommon
Right.
in the current era. But
yeah, no, those cards are great. But yeah, we're in agreement. I would rack sack all the way. I like the additions that the deck has gotten. I like the changes that people have made. I like the fact that, I don't know, for whatever reason, like Corvold showed up all the time, right? And you would kind of expect the Obnix list to show up a decent amount. Like people would just trick themselves into thinking it's good or whatever. I guess people like tried it and had bad experiences with it, but I like the fact that they are staying level-headed and not playing it. It's like, oh, I played it. It was kind of bad, but Rakdos Sacrifice is still good, you know?
Yeah, the thing about Sacrifice, and I think this has always been true through all of its iterations, it's about that core. And I think you're always best emphasizing the core, ensuring the core functions, staying lean, clean, understanding that, like, yes, things can go over top of you. Yes, you will run into enigmatic fires and it can feel kind of helpless sometimes. But that is what your deck does. You lean into your strengths. And in fact, I think by trying to just like always do that A plan, be as lean and consistent as possible, you probably make yourself better against things like those mid-range decks rather than having weird hammers that they just ultimately prepare for anyways.
Yeah. And I mean, 30% against fires, 40% against creativity. Like,
I can live with those numbers.
You still have a shot, you know? You're not a 10% matchup or anything. Like 1 in 3 ain't bad.
Yep. I think that's completely fine.
So I like it a lot.
Rakdos Gamers, let's go.
Rakdos Gamers. If the event were Pioneer, we'd have an easy cast, an easy what would Gerry play kind of situation going on here. But I don't know. I guess the fact that it's Legacy also makes it kind of easy for me, at least. Like, you might be surprised by my deck choice, but it's pretty straightforward to me. And then for Modern, I don't know, man. I'll figure it out. Might just be determined by like what cards I have and what I have sleeved up. Who knows?
Yeah, the easiest deck to build. That's always the correct solution.
Yeah, but like the new cards have been pretty good. So every set has like 5 cards that I want to own, right?
Especially this Lord of the Rings set, right? You're just beating down the door trying to pick those up.
Oh, that's legal for this. It is.
There's like 3 cards that matter.
Okay.
I'll say that.
Okay. Yeah, I guess maybe I should look into that, because like that was not part of like any of the conversations I had either. Was like, is this playable? I saw like a Footsteps Protean Hulk deck that now has a like very small kill.
Is it the Samwise GMG kill?
Yeah. Cauldron Failure.
I think that's pretty legitimate, actually. I think there's a lot of shells you can put that in.
Yeah.
That is probably the best card for Modern.
I was like, oh damn, like that is actually legit. Yeah.
Yep. I agree with you.
I mean, I've written articles about Protean Hulk, maybe not that long ago. And
I mean, I don't even know, like, Protean Hulk is fine. I agree Protean Hulk is a real card. I don't even know if you have to go that, like, there's probably a very creature-centric way to do this and just have good matchups across the board, I think, and not be as all in combo. Or maybe you have a nice flexible sideboard plan where you're Protean Hulk deck sometimes, and then you're like this fair creature deck in other spots. And that all seems possible to me, which is pretty exciting.
Whenever another non-token creature enters the battlefield under your control, create a food token. That's just like, sacrifice 3 foods, return target historic card from your graveyard to your hand. That's okay. That's less scary, but
it is, but I could still see that being useful, honestly.
Yeah, the first part of this seems like very abusable. I don't know exactly what you do, but like there were so many like food 4-piece combo decks with like manufacturer and whatnot that I'm sure that there's a bunch with this too.
No, I think this cleans up a lot of stuff. And as predicted, Samwise Gamgee will rise up to take over the Modern metagame. We all knew it was coming. There's a lot of fear of Build a Pony, but ultimately it was always going to be Samwise's day.
Yeah, we should have known or something.
Yep.
No more Lord of the Rings discourse. I
I'm
hope
sorry.
I hope all these cards fail so we never have to talk about them.
No, I think you might talk about this one. I think it might happen.
I played an RCQ and I got Gamgeed over and over again. That's
That'll
gonna
happen.
I'm just not gonna tell anyone that story. I'm just gonna be like, I didn't
Just
play.
skip it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was late to my round and got DQ'd. That's
That works. I
better
cheated.
story.
I was eliminated.
Game.
Good luck.